Hey everyone, welcome to a special holiday edition of the Business of Doing Business podcast. From Christmas to New Year's, we're going to be presenting a 4-part series featuring the most powerful insights from this year's conversations. We've had the honor of speaking to some unbelievably extraordinary individuals who shared their stories of transformation, growth, and leadership. This series highlights 7 key themes. And in each episode, it blends voices and stories that challenge norms and offer actionable insights for growth. From entrepreneurs overcoming setbacks to leaders balancing scale and authenticity, these discussions reveal timeless principles for meaningful success. As we move into the new year, it's the perfect time to reflect, grow, and prepare for what's ahead. Join us as we explore how to turn challenges into opportunities and ambitions into impactful change. We're wishing you the most amazing 2025 as you move into this new year and a wonderful holiday season with your family and loved ones. From all of us at Business of Doing Business podcast and me personally, all the blessings to you guys, and thanks for listening and sharing with us throughout the year. Oftentimes, our greatest crisis becomes our catalyst for massive change. In this episode of the Business of Doing Business, we revisit stories of transformation through loss, near-death experience, and business failures, proving that setbacks can lead to breakthroughs. You'll hear how an entrepreneur redefined wealth after losing everything, how a tragedy sparked self-discovery, and why true wealth is about freedom, not finances. Our guests offer raw insights on resilience and seeking help when needed. These stories will inspire you to rethink success, purpose, and what it means to live fully, and help you plan through for 2025. Hope you enjoy. God bless.
Wealth is defined by how long could we survive if we lost our primary source of income. Am I 1 week wealthy? Am I 1 month wealthy? Am I 1 year wealthy? How long could we survive on the means of our own assets if we lost our primary source of income? And when you start thinking about wealth like that, because what is wealth? To me, wealth doesn't have anything to do with pieces of paper with dead presidents on them. Wealth has to do with time. What makes you the wealthiest is when you have time freedom. It doesn't mean money's not important. You still have to have money to do what I'm saying, but money doesn't become the thing that you're trying to get. It becomes the means to get what you're trying to get, which is time freedom, which is a spectacular lifestyle. My goal, the reason my book is called How to Live in Every Minute, How to Create a Spectacular Life, is my whole goal is to create a spectacular life. My goal is not to have a lot of money. I think you have to have some money in order to have a spectacular life, but you don't have to have $1 billion. That's a misnomer. In fact, if you have $1 billion, you won't be any happier than if you have $100 million. I would argue that people should think about what does wealth mean to you, the philosophy, and where are you trying to get to? And then let's talk about what strategies would get you there.
I think a lot of part 2, and just for the listener, is that wealth is, to your point, not about money. It's about where you're spending your time.
Yes.
And how you're spending your time and how you have that freedom. And everybody wants to spend time differently.
So one of the things I think that COVID has taught me about certainly being a female in business is that I can be so much more effective when I work focused and I work smarter, not necessarily harder. If you ask me what one of my top 3 challenges over the last 3 years has been, it's been relearning or unprogramming that I don't need to be on the go for 10 hours a day. But because my body was so used to, okay, go, where's the next meeting? Where are we going to? What's the next deal? What's the next call I got to do? That was just this complete, it was like my body was making the changes, but my brain wasn't going in alignment with it. So that's been a really big shift for me.
Yeah, there wasn't a catch up to it. It's funny because I talked about influencers earlier, but you see all these people on social media who are like, you got to grind it. You got to fucking kill it. And, more discipline. And look, I think there is a portion of that people are missing, but I also think that is overdone. I'm just curious if you could kind of speak to that transition, because many people would describe you as living this chaotic, crazy, adventurous, insane life. Brakes get put on. So I'm sure there was some real adjustments emotionally, psychologically, physically in that whole process. But then, you get there and the learning of not having to be go, go, go every 10 minutes, working smarter versus harder. You don't hear a lot of people talking about that.
Mm-hmm.
Something I've learned over the years, because I was a sleep 3 hours a night, literally kind of guy for over a decade. So I'd love to hear your story about what that was like, that lesson that you learned.
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest lesson for me that I learned was the universe always sends you signs, and quite often we don't hear them. You'll get a nudge, you'll get a little nudge, and then you'll get a louder nudge. The bitch slap for me was I was out cycling, I got hit by a car, I broke my tailbone. So that was the universe literally going, Kim, you need to sit on your ass, you need to get grounded. I didn't listen to the other messages beforehand. So the biggest thing for me was probably getting hit by a car. The reason why I was out cycling was because I watched this documentary called Iron Mind, and it was all about how all the greats, Dorian Yates, John Joseph, Dave Goggins, all of those guys, phenomenal documentary. It's all about how we only tap into 40% of the human brain capacity. On there, they went and started training for this Ironman, and I was like, well, I can do that too. So that's why I was out. I decided, never done a triathlon or anything in my life, decided I'd sign up for a half Ironman because that's what everyone tells you to do in the business and personal development world. It's always you got to go the next level. One thing I've learned is I probably don't need to do a half Ironman at this point in my life. I can probably do something else. And so one of the lessons that came with that, speaking to what you were talking about, was all these influencers tell you you've got to have a morning routine and you've got to drink green smoothies and meditate and you got to wake up at 4 a.m. and you got to do all these things, read 10 pages of a book every day, and the list goes on. Depending on who you speak to will be dependent on what that list is. I have lived by that, or I've done my best to be disciplined enough to live by that for a number of years. But what I came to realize is that when I was performing at my best, it wasn't when I was doing all of those things. In fact, when I was doing all of those things, I was probably performing at my worst. I think it's that piece of gratitude has been a really big game changer for me. And I just unpacked all the other stuff I had in my life and asked myself, what are the things that actually fill me up and bring me joy every day? I've switched from I get to do this instead of I have to do that. The shift for me is I've gone from warrior to magician, from make it happen to let it happen. And I think that surrender is a big part of that.
Many of the people who are listening, whether they're guys or girls, they'll put their energy into their business. Because they also feel like they are contributing for the family. If you ask a lot of people who own business, like, I'm doing this for the family. And, or I'm doing it for the kids, where the kids will be like, well, we'd actually rather have you at home, not working 20 hours a day or 18 hours a day or whatever. But we fool ourselves to believing that we're serving a higher purpose. And when we're really potentially running from, I'm not saying it's just that, but if there's a problem in the relationship at home with the husband and wife, that they're closing off and their energy is going to somewhere where they feel like they could be successful.
I would totally agree with that. And I would say, it's easier to see it because there's a scoreboard in business. There's not necessarily a clear scoreboard in your relationship. It's how you feel in the moment, but you don't necessarily know how the other person feels or whether you're winning or losing and where the score is at. Is it a winnable game? Can I win this game, or is this destined to fail? And at that point, I'd rather put it into my business where I can see a result. I can change something today and I'm instantly going to see a result, or I'm going to see a result in a month or a year or whatever that looks like. And in a relationship, it's kind of blind faith.
I find it much easier to communicate in business than I do in personal relationships. I coach my staff You can ask anyone on my leadership team. Take the emotion out of it, and it's just business is business. Because I don't have a business partner. I have to have those difficult conversations on my own. And I'm pretty good at them now. It's taken me years to get to this point, but it doesn't so much intimidate me anymore. On a personal note, though, I'm not very good at it. I will admit that.
I think on a personal note, it's so much harder.
Yes, because there's emotion attached.
How do I get into wheelchair curling if he doesn't
Leave you his card.
if he doesn't reach out, right? So probably not represent Canada, probably not a Paralympian. And I'm extremely grateful to him that it's amazing that somebody in the community reaches out, and for him to do that to me, that's amazing.
That's why I brought it up. Number one, be interesting to have Carl on the podcast with us, because I'm sure he would say, yeah, but okay, I left my card, but he picked up the phone, he called. He's the one that goes to the gym every morning. He's the guy that goes, as we were talking before the podcast, you cold plunge every morning in 40-degree water. You do the things. You don't get invited to water ski camps, clinics, if you're not putting in the work. They're not bringing somebody on that isn't putting in the effort, like you said about Kobe Bryant. I think there's some distinct learning lessons here. I don't care if you own your own business, or you're in a wheelchair, or you've lost your leg, or you're an amputee, or whatever it is.
I think what I was looking for was alignment. And when you can be true to yourself, that's how you actually step into alignment. So when we're constantly trying to fit in with everybody else and fit into something, then we're not in alignment with ourselves. If we're just following all these constructs and beliefs of what the world is telling us to be, that's not who we are. So I feel like that's where I was for a very long time. I was just in the rat race of life, just listening to everybody else and just doing what you do to live life like a normal human is supposed to. But through all the things that happened to me, it brought me to where I am. It brought me to my businesses, I should say. So this all kind of started, which I didn't know it started when it did, but it did about 11 years ago when my brother passed away. He passed away when I was 22, just before 4 days before my 23rd birthday. And I'd lost one of my girlfriends 6 months prior, and then another very close friend of mine 2 years later. But in that moment when my brother passed away, that was huge. That was a big catalyst. I didn't know it at the time, of course, but it truthfully was something that I've had to learn and accept as something that really needed to happen. And I truly trust that. I have so much faith in that now. Not at the beginning. I was extremely angry at the world for a very long time. I was very much victim mindset. And after he passed away, I kind of spiraled. I already had some really not great habits at the time. Yes, I was in the health and wellness industry. I loved personal training. I just finished school for kinesiology, but I was also bartending because I loved the money and the social side of things. So me, I'm an extremist, and I like to play on extreme ends. And I was on both extreme ends of these careers. And after my brother passed, I traveled. I bought an around the world ticket and I took off. And so I spent 2 years traveling, had a wonderful time. I came back home after 2 years and worked for about 8 months. That's when my other girlfriend had passed away. And then I decided to move back to Australia for another year. And while I was in Australia, I was living with my boyfriend at the time. And I just remember one day he said to me, I woke up and I was just in a bitter mood as per usual. And he was just like, "What's wrong with you? Like, why are you such a bitch?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "You have a chip on your shoulder every day that you wake up." And I was like, "Huh, okay. Thank you for bringing that to my awareness." I probably didn't say it so nicely back then, but
Probably not.
I'm so grateful for that moment now. But he brought it to my awareness, and I honestly, really, I had to think, and I was like, wow, I'm actually really not happy at all. Trauma is not what happens to us. It's not the event itself. It's actually what's happening inside of my body. So the more that I prepare to be able to move through discomfort and to regulate myself when I'm dysregulated, the more that I'm going to trust myself that I'm going to be okay. And that just starts to eliminate more of the anxiety and the fears of like, well, what if this happens? And what if that happens? And it's like, well, shit is gonna happen. So I want to make sure that I am best suited to take care of myself when it does. because we all know it's going to. You're going to get hurt, like stress, trauma, all kinds of things are going to happen. This is the way life works, right? Again, it's your greatest teacher. Those things need to happen because you need to learn something. So for me, I put myself through the pain so that I know I can handle it when it's coming. And I want to move through it now so that I can move through it with more grace and with more compassion and with more empathy when those moments come.
I think if you stay authentic and true to what you believe and how you believe it, and that who your core values are and what you say they are is how you back them up, I think that that's what helps you get through every day. And they were literally going to land and get off a plane and see an email that said, oh, by the way, the company that's doing your event, they no longer exist.
So all the deposits at hotel, like how does that work?
That's where things got a little fearful. So I immediately jumped in and said, you've got about 30 seconds to decide. Do you walk out on this, take an early retirement or maybe a year off? Or do you jump in and figure out how to keep this business going? Because you've got a lot of clients that are going to suffer if you don't. So I think my mind was made up by the relationships and the commitment that I have to my clients and my staff, because there was no hesitation. It was, we move forward and we figure it out, but I'm going to start a new company that's going to handle all this. But my priority is I need to call all the clients, particularly the ones who are in the air, and make sure I get in touch with all the presidents and CEOs of those companies and let them know. I don't know what the financial state is right now of those events, but I will ensure that they happen, that they will take place, that I will foot the bill if I have to foot the bill, that my people will be paid who are on the ground or about to land and be on the ground to run those events, and just not to worry. The same way I just found out is the same way they found out. I said, here's what's happening, and the doors are going to shut. And I have every intention of keeping this company going and keeping everything going for our clients. I understand this is a really tough spot for you, but I need to know who's at least in with me for now, and I'll ensure that you're taken care of. And then we can figure out what the long-term plan is. But if you're in with me and you're in to make sure that our clients don't get poorly affected, then here's what we need to do. And we need to basically lock ourselves in this room at least as long as we can for the end of this day. And then I'll figure out where we meet tomorrow and continue to help everybody and make sure that this planning still continues. Everybody was there. They were so committed. They were like, we're going to do whatever it takes. What do you need us to do? We're on it. We'll do it.
I have a similar philosophy in terms of, I think there's something to be learned from everyone you're going to trip across in your life. Hopefully it's something good that you want to emulate, or maybe it's something that you want to steer clear from. So I really try to use that in my life. And again, a lot of role models, including yourself. You're so dedicated to work and whatnot, and you're persistent in your goals and whatnot. So that's one thing that I look towards, like, okay, exactly. What can I learn from that person? So that's one thing. And in terms of living life to the fullest, like you were saying, is after coming back, I have amnesia from a little bit before the accident to about a couple of days later, and just going through all those surgeries and whatnot, and reading the notes that my mother and other people took, that, you're really dead for a bit and whatnot. So I kind of live my life that I wouldn't want to say like every day is your last, but it very well might be. And so I wanted to do the things that, cross those things off your list and live life to the fullest without being careless. Like, I am a saver financially, whatnot, but also, when I bought the car that I wanted, the boat that I wanted, in case the next time I die, it's the final time. So I think there's a fine line between the responsibility of hoping you live, forever, but also realizing that our time here is finite. So, I mean, and as I get older, I've seen people pass away that you're like, wow, that was too young. And you know what? It could happen at any time. So I kind of want to make sure that, not putting off that vacation, not putting off, calling that person, going and try something.
For the ones who don't feel like they have a purpose, how do you sort that?
I'll put yes, I found purpose in my work, but I don't look for fulfillment in my work per se. I think the fulfillment is probably a result of the work. So I wake up, I really enjoy my job. I love working with people. I love the turnover and that it's always new people. I mean, I see the same people I've been selling real estate for 7 years, I think right now. So you get to see the same people every couple of years, which is amazing, but it's always new. But also, I don't think you should look for happiness in your work. For me, that's not the goal. It's I work to afford myself the other stuff that I want to do. I love to travel. I love to my thing is, which we'll probably chat about, is watching sunsets. That's my deal. So I try to take that hour off every day and do that. So I do enjoy my work, but I don't look for fulfillment in it in terms of what I want to get up and do every day. I think I'm happy with the results afterwards, and I love helping people, but I love my job, but I'd rather be boating.
Right. I have a job because it affords me to boat.
Yes, that's bingo. That's it.
Right.
So,
but it's an interesting concept because I think a lot of people go, well, I haven't found my purpose yet. And it's like, well, maybe just start doing something.
Yeah, move in that direction. See what you enjoy. Like, I mean, we've all got to work. Well, I guess there are some people that don't, but I mean, look for something that you make the most of. And for some people, like I know people that work a factory job and they're happy with it. They love their coworkers. They like at 5:00 they're checked out and they can be on to the next thing. And I know other people who more entrepreneurial spirit that they're happy to be, 24/7. Like I wake up thinking about work, and I'm not mad about it. Like, I mean, I think that's a conscious choice to let that work be part of your life. And I know other realtors who are, I'm done at 9, whatever else. And everyone's got their own way to do it. And their clients, I'm sure, love it. Mine love a different thing. Most of my client relationships turn into friendships and whatnot. I don't mind getting a call in the middle of the night about that kind of stuff.
So my takeaway on that was, like, you focus on what you do have.
Mm-hmm.
And you said it earlier, you focus on what you do have and not what you don't have.
Right.
You focus and you celebrate every year, your Smashiversary, because you're grateful for being alive,
for sure,
for what you have, where you're at, the life you've built.
To admit at all that you need help, or to seek it out, or to ask somebody a question reveals weakness in an uneducated, immature mind. Okay. You're revealing weakness when it's the greatest strength you can have.
Mm-hmm.
But I took it as weakness. And so I buried it and I didn't ask anybody for help. Just kept making ego-based. It doesn't matter. It's going to turn it around. I'm a Superman. I'm going to be able to do blah, blah, blah. Which is total and utter bullshit, complete and total bullshit. And so, yes, it was the fear of that. And it was embarrassment. I was a leader. I was probably second or third in line to be mayor of that little town. I had worked my way up. And now here I am failing in front of everybody, my church and all the people that I'd given money to and all these other kind of things. It was a radical thing. I've learned since then, I am not my business. My business is not me.
Right. It's a good lesson to learn. It's a huge lesson to learn. I mean, I've made the mistake. I've been pretty good over the years for asking for help. I've always had a mentor, but I see that mistake being replicated over and over and over again in other people that have businesses, that unwillingness to ask for help.
Number one, your end game. What does it look like? Well, it has that component of freedom. What does freedom mean to you? And that's the deep work that you have to do. Whoever's watching this and listening to these words, you have to do it for yourself. If somebody else is telling you it's not your dream, it's not your freedom. My adopted father went to prison. My excuse went to prison. My excuse for why I was being a jerk, why I was breaking the law, my excuse for poor me, my daddy this, my dad that, like blah, blah, blah. My excuse went away and got locked up. And so now I had to stare down the barrel of who I was deciding to be and what kind of man I was going to be and what kind of father I was going to be. I'll never forget, I was already deciding to get out of the gang lifestyle, and my son was born, and it was the week he was born. And I was like, man, what kind of a dad am I going to be? This is like, what kind of a person does the things that I'm doing right now? And then what kind of leadership is that going to be? And I was literally at the last drug deal, second to the last. I'll tell you about the last one, but the second to last drug deal that I was doing. And I really didn't even want to be there. I was just telling the guy that I was hanging out with, I'm like, I think I'm done. He's like, well, you might be done, but we have this deal going down out in the parking lot tonight. And that night I saw this glimmer in the, sort of in the moonlight or off of the street lights or whatever it was. And his guy had a knife. And so he was about to rob us. And I pushed my friend out of the way and it exposed my chest, and he went with a knife. I've got a scar all the way across my chest, but it went in my chest. And as soon as it hit my chest, I was like, a Bible verse popped into my head. And again, remember, I wasn't religious, but it was a Bible verse. it was the Bible verse that said, the sins of the father are born onto the children, which basically means if you don't take responsibility, lead an upstanding life, that all of that stuff is going to be shoveled onto your kid to try to figure it out. And I was like, if I survive this, then I'm going to change my life. I'm going to do something different. I didn't know what it was. Much like people you've seen, we've been around the Tony Robbins world a lot of times. People come in there and they're like, well, now I know there's a different way to think and be and act, but what do I do? Right? And so I look back to your question, and it was that moment where I had a son, a Bible verse popped into my head, near-death experience on my part, and a decision. Now, it wasn't a life-changing decision. I didn't know what to do. I had no clue. There was no inputs on how to be a good man, what to do. I came out of that. I survived it. And I just said, I'm done. And I went and got a job with he was eventually would be my brother-in-law, peeling logs for log cabins, hand peeling them for like $5 an hour. going from making a lot of money in the drug world and being somebody and being feared to being the lowest man on the totem pole, right? Making that kind of money. And then I got a raise. I went to work for my eventual father-in-law, 3 levels deep underneath of a mine, digging a sump all day long. But I knew that I had to change, and I knew that I had to make different decisions, or else my son, that was my impetus. I don't know that I would have changed if it wasn't for my son being better for somebody else, making sure that I wasn't going to throw weights on his ankles as he walked into the world. I don't know that I would have changed. Thank God I did.
Health to me is I can go do whatever activities I want to do because my body is not going to be the stopping thing of that. And so I break that in sort of 3 pieces. And that is strength, cardiovascular fitness, and flexibility. If you're flexible and you have cardiovascular fitness and you have strength, then you're fit. That's what fitness really is. There is no other component of physical health. So it seems like if you read all the internet and you read all everybody's books, it seems way complicated. There's so many people's ideas and philosophies and all this kind of things. But at the end of the day, it's one of 3 things: strength, flexibility, or cardiovascular fitness.
We're creatures of habit. My habit was to build a business, grow a business. And then I had a second business. I'm going to build that one. I'm going to grow that one. And, for 10 years in my 20s before I had kids, I would grind. I would work a lot of hours, 6 in the morning until 10 at night, 7 days a week. And I was happy doing that. I was very, very happy doing what I was doing. And you have kids and you try to cut back on weekends and whatnot. And I thought, hey, if I'm around on the weekend, that's good. And then, you take on some more business and things, get challenging. So anytime they're challenging, my habit was to just work more. I'll work harder. I will not ever fail on a goal. I'm going to work harder. And so I think what happened is I got so used to that, my neurological pathway was I'm going to work harder and I'm doing this for the people around me. I'm doing this for our future. And so I think I may have been playing the long game so well that, I couldn't see what was happening right in front of me. And I know I played the long game well because that long-term vision became a reality for me. But I think there's a way to also sort of live in the moment. And I think when it really hit me was when I realized that I had ruined a marriage, when I looked in the mirror and I wasn't happy, when I could buy anything essentially that I wanted, park it in the driveway or pull up to a new house and not be happy. I think that was really when it hit me. And it all sort of came about in 1 year. And I would say that was the biggest gift of my life is just seeing that.
I know you're not going to want to hear this, but I'm going to tell you anyways, because in the end of the day, It's through those struggles, it's through that honesty that we're going to find a way forward, because most people don't. They fail to say the important things. They fail to ask for what they want in the relationship. They fail to be transparent with each other. And then they sit in a lawyer's office and wonder why it ended. And to me, it's like, you have to be vulnerable. You have to lead with your heart, or you're not going to get what you want. And for me, that's in everything. Like, I know this is obviously a business podcast, but you're not going to get what you want out of life, whether that be business, health, finances, relationship. I don't believe you can do that without finding some openness and vulnerability within yourself, and opening yourself up to being hurt or hearing things that you don't want to hear as a leader, as a wife, as a friend, as a daughter, as a mother. That is, to me, where you find fulfillment.
I could be in hospital for 9 months as they trying to work and save it and see what's, by the time you get through all of that, I could die in the process. There's nothing, if I get an infection or the hand starts to, truly is necrotic, then obviously that blood poisoning, all of that you have to kind of weigh up. But at the end, it was a simple decision for me, which is, what's the quickest way to get back to life? I want to get out of hospital. I don't think I can keep going with these surgeries. And again, I didn't realize, it's like anything in life, if I'd have known that, what I know now. But I just thought, okay, one more surgery, we amputate, I'm done, I can start healing, we can get, I don't want to spend 9 months in hospital. So, for me, I'd made the decision of, okay, the quickest way to get back to life is for the amputation. I had no frame of reference to know what it would be like as an amputee, but it just seemed better than the path we were on, should we say, of just surgery after surgery after surgery. Talked it through with Kerry and kind of said, I think, amputation seems to be the best. She was still fighting to save the hand. And then and she doesn't really remember this. I remember it pretty vividly, so I don't think I was hallucinating. But I remember we were laying outside the surgery to go in for the amputation. And she was there, waiting with me, holding my hand. And she kind of looked at me and said, hey, are you sure you want to do this? Because there's no going back. And even like internally, I kind of was like, no shit, Sherlock. What came to me was, it's okay, we have to let it go. And that idea of letting go of something that no longer served me was it's been an anchor, it's just been something I always come back to, through that experience. Was I didn't lose my hand, I let go of something that was no longer going to serve me. As I look back and frame up kind of what I went through, there were really three stages that I think helped me get through everything. Was accept what has happened and take responsibility for it. Don't blame anyone. Don't even blame yourself, type of thing, but just accept what has happened. Forgive yourself and all those around you. And those were the two things that kind of happened in Colombia, and as we're going in Mercy. And, how could you not when you're surrounded by such love and care? And then the third one is, letting go of something that no longer served me. So it's, those three things, through business, through life, now are always my anchor of accept, forgive, let go.
We're wishing you a wonderful holiday season with your family and loved ones. From all of us at Business of Doing Business podcast and me personally, all the blessings to you guys, and thanks for listening and sharing with us throughout the